Ladies and gentlemen, for us, your health and your family's health is way more important than a politician's health. So we are starting the show with something that really shouldn't have come as a shock to any one of us. In India, when we say baby food, we think of Cerelac. That's the first thing that comes to our mind. It's food that almost every baby in India has been fed. It's tasty, it has sugar in it. We all know that. But now an investigation by Public Eye, which is an organization based out of Switzerland, has put out a report that tells us just how much sugar per serving of Cerelac has and why that smacks of double standards. Now, the report is called, "For Nestle, Not All Babies Are Equal." That's the title of Public Eye's report. This report is telling us that Nestle, the maker of Cerelac, have been selling baby products with higher sugar content in poorer South Asian countries like Thailand, Ethiopia, and India. The same product that is sugar-free in Europe and the UK is loaded with sugar in India. Now, all of us are aware of risks that sugar carries with it, so I will not dwell on it for the moment. What I will tell you are the details of the report. A Belgian laboratory tested samples of Cerelac from across the world, and the sugar levels were found to be over and above international food safety guidelines. The report is claiming that Cerelac, which is a wheat-based product for 6-month-old babies, was sold in the UK and Europe without any added sugar. But it contained 3 grams of added sugar per serving in India. The highest sugar in the product was actually added not in India, but in Thailand. And that was double of what India had, 6 grams. Question is, why is a product that is sugar-free in the UK and in Switzerland layered with sugar in India? Now, Nestle, interestingly, itself on its website is saying that sugar shouldn't be added in food given to babies, nor should sugary drinks be given to babies. Why add more sugar for babies in poor and developing nations? Is their health not as important, or is nothing as important as profits? In the interest of fairness and transparency, I need to tell you this. We reached out to Nestle. We wanted to hear their voice and their side of the story on this show. We haven't heard back from them. But they have put out a statement that says, and I quote, "We have reduced sugar by up to 30% in the last 5 years, depending on the variant in our infant cereals." The company also says that it never compromises on nutritional quality of their products. Meanwhile, the government of India, that has recently cracked the whip on Bournvita because of its high sugar content, has taken suo motu cognizance of this Public Eye report and says that an expert panel will now look into these findings. Is this the first time that Nestle is finding itself in a controversy? No. Earlier in 2021, it had faced backlash for its unhealthy food portfolio after an internal presentation indicated that a considerable portion of its mainstream food and beverage range didn't meet the recognized health standard. Nestle, to their credit, had acknowledged that 60% of its food and drinks portfolio, excluding pet food, baby formula, and coffee, failed to meet health criteria. Then there was, of course, Maggi, our favorite 2-minute noodle, that got entangled in a lawsuit in 2015, where it was found that excess lead and MSG was used in approximately 28,000 tons of Maggi, which were eventually withdrawn from markets and destroyed. In fact, in 1977, the company had faced a backlash in the US for allegedly discouraging breastfeeding to promote its baby formula. It faced a backlash and was even boycotted until 1984, when Nestle agreed to WHO marketing guidelines. It's not just baby food. There's a difference in other products as well. For example, Kit Kat. We love Kit Kat. An Australian Kit Kat and an Indian Kit Kat are different, especially if you take into account some of its components. Milk solids, for example, in a Kit Kat in Australia is 25%, while in India it's about 16.2%. Cocoa solids in a Kit Kat in Australia around 22%, while in India it's just 4.5%. Question is, what do these global food giants take into account while making the same product for different countries? If taste and preference are taken into consideration, then why not health? Why these double standards? I'm putting that question to our guest this evening. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai is chairperson of the Nephron Clinic. He's joining us on the broadcast. Lloyd Mathias is a business strategist with us. And Sheetal Bansal is an integrative nutritionist. She's a gut health coach, also very importantly, a parent, joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Bagai, many people are looking at the data we are putting out for them and public eyes report that we are putting out for them, and they're wondering what the fuss is about. So 3 grams of added sugar in every serving of Cerelac, what's the big deal? In a country that in any case loves sugar and wants to eat sugar, just needs a bahana to eat sugar actually.
Good evening, Shreya. Good evening, everyone. I think this is a silent, bittersweet truth amounting to disaster for children and going forward into childhood, young adolescents, and then young adults. So let me just quickly break it up into 4 very, very quick parts. One is that breastfeeding is exclusively recommended for the first 6 to 9 months, and then weaning foods. Weaning foods should always be home foods, natural foods, and packed foods. That's a no-brainer. Now, a child under the age of 1, preferably under the age of 2, should be given no added sugar. Natural foods contain sugar. That's not called as added sugar. That is more than sufficient for the body metabolism. Any sugar which is an added amount is not good for children, especially small toddlers and infants. The daily requirements of a small infant or a child through naturally occurring foods is less than 4 to 6 grams per day. Now, what happens with Nestle? So before I come to what happens with Nestle, just give me just 60 seconds running. A routine adult, when I say adult of 60 to 80 kg, requires 36 grams of sugar. A small infant requires no added sugar. A 3 gram per serving and 6 to 8 feeds in a day is exposing a small infant to more than 20 to 22, going up to 24 grams of sugar. What does sugar do in the body? Weight gain, obesity, chronic heart disease, hypertension, cancers, early onset of type 2 diabetes, of course, dental problems, chronic inflammatory diseases, depression, cognitive disorders, cellular aging, strokes later on in life, sleep disturbances, and inflammatory bowel disease. This is called as gut, neuronal, metabolic, hormonal axis. We know that diabetes, incidence, hypertension, cancers are dramatically, exponentially increasing. The bottom line is children, especially under the age of 1, should be given no added sugar. Any product which is giving this is harmful to children. There is an old saying, I am today what I was yesterday. I will be tomorrow what I am today. What we are doing to our children today is going to impact the entire life as far as health, cognitive function, multi-organ disease is concerned, morbidity, and mortality. The answer is should not be given.
Therefore, Lloyd Mathias, what explains the response that Nestle has put out? I'm fairly certain, as a business strategist, you've seen what Nestle is saying. We reached out to them to send their spokesperson on the show. They chose not to, which is perfectly fine. We respect that. They've put out a statement. In the interest of fairness, we are putting that statement out on our screens as well. I want to ask you what that statement tells you, because to me, has not denied the double standards. This is a 100-year-old company. This is a company that retails in 190 countries. Why would it maintain these double standards for, for poorer nations or developing nations?
Thank you, Shreya. I think the issue is indeed serious. I think Dr. Bagai has laid out all the issues pertaining to added sugars, specifically at an infant foods level. So I think the issue is absolutely serious. Before we get into Nestle's specific response, I think it's important to understand 2 parts. I think one is that a large global company with a long storied history, and Nestle has been in India for a very long time, I think will typically play clearly within the rules. right? Specifically Nestle, because about a decade ago, they were very badly singed, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, with the Maggie controversy. So they've already had a run-in, so to speak, and that impacted their stock price and market capitalization, all the rest. So I have no, I mean, prima facie, I would like to believe that until Nestle comes out with clear clarification, that they won't obviously have double standards, right? So if they're having a set of ingredients in a different part of the world, I would think they would largely maintain the same set, same ingredients, barring for certain regional taste considerations, right? It's known that food brands do have minor variants, accommodating for local tastes, and in some cases, even accommodating for pricing of ingredients. So that's a reality. Assume that the single product is going to be uniformly standard across the world, I think sometimes is a little too much. And that clearly is an ethical issue. So I would say that until Nestle comes out with a clear clarification, it may be unfair to damn them. But clearly, if the issue is about misleading declarations, if the issue is about misleading claims and hiding back information, I think that's completely unacceptable. And if a business and a brand as large as Nestle were to do it, I think that would be completely shocking.
What is completely not shocking to me, Sheetal Bansal, is that Nestle, I mean, Cerelac has sugar. We all know that, right? We've all eaten Cerelac. We know it has sugar. We've always known it has sugar. Should we be surprised at all with the report that has come out? It's not like Nestle tried to hide anything. And what Mr. Mathias is essentially saying is that products sometimes are tweaked according to the taste of certain regions. And we know that as Indians, we love sweets. In fact, India is the largest consumer of sugar in this world. If we are depressed, we want something sweet. If we are happy, we want something sweet. Is Nestle therefore being unnecessarily targeted for simply tweaking their product to suit the taste buds of Indians?
Yeah, sure. I don't think they have been targeted, but yes, you're right. The sugar is like a happy hormone. It triggers the happy hormone in your body. So it's like you need, if you're feeling low in mood, so you'll need sugar. If you have brain fog, so you have sugar. But it's a vicious circle. The sugar which we are talking about, we can have in a natural form, and the sugar which we are having in Cerelac and all these health drinks, so that they are having in a artificial form, which is harmful for our kids' health, and they are damaging the kids' bacterial flora at a very worse level. So these bacteria flora, when they are harmed, they are hampering their immunity levels also, because as 70% of immunity is built in the gut only. So these artificial sweeteners are not at all prescribed, because these are the processed. We can move to the natural and the natural sources of sugar like rock sugar, dates, or jaggery form, and avoiding these artificial sugars at once.
Okay, Dr. Bagai, would you want to answer that question that I asked Sheetal here?
Yeah, so
हम लोग अपने बच्चे वो 3 साल के हों 6 साल के हों, we are very happy to give them halwa. We are always very happy to give them kheer every day. So who are we to cry about Nestle using extra sugar to kids in their Cerelac for India?
Yeah. So there is a distinction. Food does contain sugar. Sugar is required in the body. But in smaller infants and toddlers, the distinction is made that the added sugar should not be given. Now, if your added sugar, if a child, say, hypothetically is primarily on Cerelac or any other product which contains 3 grams of sugar per serving, then the baby is being exposed to almost more than 20 to 22 grams, which is far exceeding what the routine daily requirement is per se itself. Point number 2 is, if the child is then having some other food products as natural home products, those also contain sugar. So A plus B is a huge C. Now, the effect of this is multifold. To tell you very briefly, what this actually does is it activates your, what we call as your inflammatory markers in your body, in your gut, in your liver, in your kidney, in your brain, what we call as ROS, reactive oxygen species, macrophages, interleukins, cytokines, and it causes a chronic inflammatory process. This is a cascade. once it starts, it will continue to propagate. And long term, it has effects. So we always recommend normal, natural home foods in weaning and exclusive breastfeeds for the first year.
But Dr. Bagai, don't doctors themselves, and especially pediatricians themselves, recommend Cerelac? They do. And the sugar content, if you just look behind and bother to check, I mean, it's such a fine print that frankly, I can't read it. But if you bother to check, it will tell you how much sugar it has. And many doctors in this country recommend Cerelac as baby food.
To put it in a very frank and ruthlessly honest manner, that is wrong. It should not be recommended. If someone is doing it, they need to take a relook at their prescriptions.
Lloyd Matthew, I'm again coming back to the response that Nestle has put out. Nestle has said that in the last 5 years, it's not like we've not tried. We've actually cut down on 30% sugar over the last 5 years in our baby foods, which is acknowledgement that you have sugar in a product where sugar should not be there. Again, I come back to the question of why a baby product that doesn't have sugar in the UK or Switzerland requires to have sugar in a country like India. You're saying taste, but taste be your health be, na?
Quite right, Shreya. I think having differentiated products, specifically in a very sensitive category, as an infant food, I think is not acceptable, right? So clearly, a large organization like Nestle ought to have thought that through. So I'll still give them the benefit of the doubt and wait for them to come out with a clear clarification on where they stand. I would say that governance standards of large global organizations, Nestle is also a listed entity in India, has a set of independent directors on their board. I think they would have possibly gone through this with some degree of detail. What is clearly unacceptable is making misleading claims, hiding or curtailing information, or improper disclosures. And I'm sure competent bodies like the FSSAI, I presume that Cerelac being an infant food product,
correct,
the FSSAI would have approved all the labeling, all the packaging. And I think if there's any deviation in that, then the issue is absolutely severe. And I think then there's virtually nothing that the company holds back the company from being under any kind of penal clause. However, I would still for the moment await a detailed clarification. What is being disclosed, and I think the point Dr. Bagai is making, I think is really worrying. And if they are making a differentiated claim in India without proper substantiation, I think that is an issue that needs to be looked into.
And Dr. Bagai, I'm just going to give you 10 seconds on this as I wrap the show. It's not just Cerelac or it's not just baby food. The point is that India does have a sugar problem. And maybe India needs to start looking at, the Indian government actually needs to start looking at how to cut down on this consumption. For example, South Africa, it is now taxing sugary drinks. To say, okay, if you want to drink anything sugary, go ahead, drink it, but you'll have to pay an extra tax on it. Our government likes to tax everything. Why not extra tax on everything that is extra sugary?
I think we need to look at the genesis of the problem. If we attack the end point, that means the complications, we are not looking at the genesis. The genesis is that we need to concentrate and focus on public awareness and educating the patient families, especially young couples, on nutrition. And very often doctors don't spend so much time because they write the medication and don't counsel patients for nutrition, protein, calorie, carbohydrate, and caloric requirements, how a balanced diet is made. That's extremely important. Point number 2 is not only sugar, but also salt. So Indians have a great latching on and a great affinity towards sugar and salt. And I think people should be made aware of the side effects, long-term damage. It's a famous saying, easy on the lips and then forever on your hips. And likewise, it tastes very good with salt, but then it affects your heart. So I think we need to be careful. Public awareness is very important. Educating patient families. Young couples need counseling. Young couples need advice. I think the extra 5 minutes per consultation, with young families is critical.
And when you speak of extra the extra 5 minutes, let me also just tell you about salt. The recommended consumption is some 5 grams per day. What is India's intake? 8 grams a day. So we love our sugar, we love our salt. We simply need to go easy on it. And let's not just blame Cerelac and Nestle. Yes, there are clear double standards at play. But please look at what we are doing to our kids as well. Feeding them constant kheer and sevai and halwa and saying it's good for health. Sugar is not good for anyone's health. Let's just simply accept that. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. Mr. Matthias, thank you. And Sheetal Bansal, thank you very much for joining us.